Sweetheart, please, your grandma is in need of you right now. She's really not doing so hot. My mother's voice rasped through the phone, saturated with what I now understand was feigned worry. I was sitting in my Indianapolis apartment, with all the suitcases I had packed for our long-awaited family cruise around me, my eagerness suddenly transforming into anxiety. Without a second thought, I answered, "Of course I will stay. If Grandma is in need of support, the cruise just isn't a priority." I would come to seriously regret those very words in just a few short hours. I'm Tara Smith, and I'm currently 28 years of age. Throughout my entire life, I've strived to be the dependable daughter, the one everyone could rely on when the going got tough. But that loyalty to family was on the verge of being challenged in ways I never could have foreseen. I had spent months eagerly anticipating this cruise. We had planned for it to be our first genuine family getaway in several years, including me, my folks, my younger sister Emma, as well as a few other relatives. I had even requested time off from my job and purchased a new summer wardrobe. But when my mom rang me about Grandma being hospitalized, I immediately canceled my plans. As I drove to the hospital later that evening, my phone vibrated with a notification. Emma had made a social media post. As I gazed at the picture, my whole family on the cruise liner, toasting with champagne flutes, my heart skipped a beat. The caption read, "The best vacation ever, feeling so fortunate to have such an incredible family, cruise life family time." I stopped the car on the side of the road, my hands trembling as I couldn't take my eyes off the picture. There they all were, Mom, Dad, Emma, my aunts and uncles beaming on the boat's deck. It turned out they hadn't been honest with me. They had kept me from going on the family trip on purpose, using my dear grandmother as the reason I couldn't go. When I eventually showed up at the hospital, there was no indication that my grandmother had even been there. My calls to my folks just kept going to voicemail. The feeling of being double-crossed stung intensely, like a punch to the gut. I made my way over to Grandma's house, tears making it hard to see. "Tara, what's the matter, honey?" Grandma questioned, wrapping me in a comforting hug. As we sat together in her snug living room, I ended up telling her everything. The cruise, the dishonesty, the posts online that had totally devastated me. "Why would they make up a story about you being sick?" I questioned, drying my face. Grandma's expression turned to one of sadness. Thinking back to my childhood in Indianapolis, I always noticed how my sister received preferential treatment. When Emma expressed interest in dance, they managed to make it happen. But when it came to my college expenses, I was the one who had to resort to student loans. I started reflecting on all my visits to Grandma over the years, all the times I had helped her with grocery shopping, driven her to her medical appointments, or just spent time sitting with her, flipping through old family photos. Emma almost never visited unless she wanted something, usually cash. But somehow, she still held the position of favorite child in my parents' estimation. Grandma admitted that my mother had contacted her the previous week, her voice strained with resentment. She requested that I participate in their plan if you happen to come over, feigning a hospital stay. Naturally, I declined her request. I was completely unaware that they would actually put this whole deception into motion. Those cruise tickets weren't exactly inexpensive. They cost nearly $2,000 apiece for a week exploring the Caribbean. I had been saving up for what felt like forever at the accounting firm where I worked to be able to pay for my own. I was starting to wonder if they had already decided to leave me out, and if my money for the ticket had somehow been used to pay for someone else's accommodations. "Do you know what stings the most?" I said, my eyes fixed on my hands. They didn't even require such a complicated lie. They could have just been straightforward and told me they didn't want my company. "The worst part is they exploited your love for me to try to trick me." Grandma took hold of my hand, her grasp surprisingly firm. She said knowingly that sometimes people inadvertently reveal their true character, even when they believe they're keeping it a secret. "So the real question is, how will you use that information?" I glanced up at her face and saw an intensity and resolve shining in her eyes. I wasn't aware at the time, but Grandma had been observing what was going on in our family more attentively than any of us, and she was formulating her own ideas about it. My phone vibrated again as I sat with Grandma in her living room. My cousin Nina, who was unaware I'd been left out of the cruise, had sent a group text this time. Her intention was to share some vacation snapshots with everyone in the family group chat, not knowing that I wasn't supposed to be in the loop. As I browsed through the pictures, my spirits plummeted. There was Emma in that sundress that I had actually helped her choose for her trip. My mom and dad were relaxing by the pool, each holding a cocktail. The whole family was all together for a formal dinner, all dolled up and just having a good time. But what really grabbed my attention was my mom's diamond necklace, that one that Grandma had given her years ago, intending for it to be shared between her daughters when we turned 30. Had she already given it to Emma? I inquired, pointing out the picture to Grandma. Even though I'm the elder one, right? Even though we were supposed to divide it. Grandma moved closer to examine the picture, her face growing more stern. That necklace has been a part of our family heritage for 3 generations now, she stated softly. Your great-grandmother divided her jewelry equally between her daughters. That's why I gave it to your mother with precise directions on how to handle it. Then my grandmother disclosed a piece of information that sent a chill right through me. The cruise actually hadn't been financed with my mom and dad's funds. She had actually provided them with $15,002 months prior to arrange a family getaway, making it completely clear that the money was meant for all of us. Instead, they took the share meant for me and used it to improve their own rooms and schedule additional trips. I've been observing, Grandma went on, her tone laden with sadness. I have seen how they've treated you unfairly for ages. I was still wishing that they might change, that they would become aware of their behavior. But this, well, this is the final point I can handle. Getting to her feet, she went over to her desk, taking out a large, sturdy envelope. I wasn't intending to reveal this to you just yet, but it's important that you're in the know. I have been documenting each occasion they've given Emma preferential treatment, each time they've exploited your generous nature, and every cent they've allocated unevenly between the two of you. The envelope contained bank records, pictures, digital messages, and jotted notes that stretched back over multiple years. My hands were shaking as I looked over everything. The reality of the situation was right there in plain sight. I wasn't just making up the pattern of favoritism. It was planned, unvarying, and purposeful. But I wondered aloud, why? As the impact of years of manipulation and rejection came crashing down around me, how could they persistently make me think I was inventing things? A look of resolve I'd never witnessed before shone in Grandma's eyes. Because that's the strategy employed by people who know they are in the wrong. Their aim is to undermine your self-confidence. But that's going to end now, Tara. I'm done with that. The planned duration of the family cruise was a week. The following morning, as I was sitting in my apartment in Indianapolis, looking over Grandma's papers, a text popped up on my phone from Emma. My mom claims you're telling falsehoods about us. Can't you just be glad for a change instead of always trying to sabotage things? I just looked at the message, feeling my anger grow. It seemed they were still trying to paint me as the bad guy, even after everything they had put me through. Instead of replying to Emma, I took a step I'd never been brave enough to take. I put the real story out there on social media. It's really something how being deceived about my grandmother needing to go to the hospital, also my family could leave me out of a vacation, somehow makes asterisk me the issue, I wrote, and then I added Emma's best vacation ever picture. What's even more absurd is that the cruise was funded using money that was supposed to include me. Almost instantly, my post started blowing up with responses. Our family friends, who had known us for ages, expressed how surprised they were. My cousins, who weren't aware of the complete situation, started sending me private messages, sharing their personal experiences of how I had been treated unfairly over the years. Then, my father gave me a call. I hesitated to pick up, but Grandma's words came back to me. "Don't back down, you haven't done anything wrong," he said in a frigid tone. "You need to delete that post right now. You're making this whole family look bad." To which I replied, "No, it was you who humiliated us all, Dad, when you fabricated that whole illness thing about Grandma, when you swiped her funds, the funds that were supposed to benefit everyone, and then used them to shut me out. That's not the reality of the situation," he protested. "We just required some time away from your unending, my unending what exactly, Dad? My consistent dependability, my steady support in caring for Grandma, my ongoing dedication to trying to belong in this family regardless of how you guys treat me." The phone line went silent for a short period. When he started talking once more, his tone had shifted, and it felt like a threat. "If you don't delete that online content and make a public apology for all the falsehoods, you'll be sorry. You honestly don't understand how much is on the line in this situation. Is that a threat you're making? I'm just giving you a word of caution. For all these years, your mother and I have been safeguarding you, preventing you from learning specific truths. If you're wanting to proceed in this manner, then so be it. But keep in mind, you aren't the only one who holds the ability to share narratives. The phone conversation concluded, and I was left feeling unsettled. What kind of secrets had they been keeping me safe from? What kind of narratives were they capable of revealing? I picked up the phone and rang Grandma right away. They're trying to intimidate me, I explained to her. Dad claims they've been shielding me from something, but they won't tell me what. Grandma didn't say anything for a long while. Check your inbox was what she eventually uttered. I'm about to send something to you. Okay, here's the paraphrased version. I think it's time I shared everything with you. When I flipped open my laptop, my hands shaking a bit, I understood that this wasn't just some vacation. The content of that email would alter my life forever, and based on the way Grandma sounded, Mom and Dad were right to be concerned about what I was about to find out. My hands were actually trembling as I accessed the email from Grandma. There was a scanned copy of something inside, a legal document from a quarter of a century ago, a trust agreement that made me gasp. The papers indicated that my grandfather on my mother's side had left a sizable amount of money when he died, intended to be split equally among all of us grandchildren when we all reached our 30th birthdays. The entire trust was valued at over $2 million. Yet there was still more to the story. Some banking records showed ongoing deductions from the trust throughout the years, money that was used for things like Emma's dance classes, her schooling in a private academy, her university expenses, and even her wedding that recently took place. It had all been deducted from the portion meant for me. They've been taking money from you since you were just a kid, Grandma told me on the phone. Your mom swayed the trustee, her sibling Michael, into giving her access to your part early, suggesting that it would benefit you. But as you can clearly tell, they spent every last penny on Emma, I concluded, my voice sounding empty. The amounts were incredible. More than $500,000 had been drained from my trust fund across the years, while I was working multiple jobs to pay my own way through school. Right then, another message showed up in my inbox, and it was from my Uncle Michael this time. Tara, I just can't keep this bottled up inside any longer. The way they handled that money for the cruise was really the final straw for me. I've included with this message records detailing each time they took money out of your trust fund. I really am sorry about this. I should have put a stop to their actions a long time ago. The documents that were included unveiled an even more horrifying reality. It wasn't just that my folks had spent my trust fund on Emma, they had been stealing money for their own benefit as well. The cruise was just the latest instance of the plan they'd been running. Why didn't you come forward to me sooner? I questioned Grandma, attempting to wrap my head around how huge the betrayal was. I only just uncovered the full scope of what they were doing, she answered. I brought it up with your mom last month, and she promised that they would pay back all the money. That's the point at which I provided the money for the cruise. It was intended as a test for them, Tara. I wanted to see if, for once, they'd actually do what's right. And they messed it up royally, I remarked with bitterness. True, but their screw-up has provided us with just what we needed, evidence. In addition to what I know and the whole cruise situation, your Uncle Michael has said he's willing to testify about the way they messed with the trust. We can pursue legal options, I concluded, feeling a wave of resolution wash over me, replacing my shock. Even better than that, Grandma said, and I could hear how determined she sounded. We can guarantee they can never cause you any more harm. Take a look at the second attachment in this email. I opened it up and let out a gasp. It was Grandma's last will and testament, recently revised. I found out that she had made me the only beneficiary of everything she owned, and I now understood this meant I had majority ownership of the very company where my dad was the boss. Grandma had stated emphatically that pretty soon, those people would understand that what they'd been doing wasn't without repercussions. I met up with my Uncle Michael the following day at a coffee shop in the heart of Indianapolis. The bags under his eyes showed he hadn't gotten a lot of sleep, and his hands were shaking a bit as he gave me a bulky folder. He said in a low voice that these were copies of absolutely every piece of paper and financial interaction. Every single thing has already been given to our lawyer, I learned. Your mom and dad, they are likely to challenge this, Tara. Since I forwarded that email, they've already phoned me at least half a dozen times. What are they saying to you? I inquired as I rapidly glanced through the incriminating proof of years of financial deception. He shook his head in disbelief. They're making the claim that their intentions were to protect you and your inheritance. I also ran across something separate, something I'm aware of that they don't know. He brought out another paper that documented a string of recent wire transfers to an overseas account. Tara, they intend to flee the country. They have been shifting funds around, getting ready for something to happen. It turns out that trip on the cruise wasn't simply a getaway, it was practice to see what they could get away with. They were seeing if their passports would trigger any alarms. A chill went through me. You mean they're trying to escape? Yes, with whatever remains of the money that was supposed to be held in your name. And Emma's tangled up in this. Apparently, she's been assisting them by creating accounts under her identity to conceal the funds. Right then, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Emma. I'm aware of what you're up to. You've always harbored envy toward me, and now you're attempting to sabotage everything I've worked for. But here's the kicker, you've missed your opportunity. By the time you understand the situation fully, we'll have disappeared and you'll be left with absolutely nothing. I showed the message to Uncle Michael and his face lost all color. They are proceeding at a quicker pace than I had initially believed. We have to take action without delay. I immediately rang Grandma. She picked up on the initial ring, almost like she'd been anticipating my call. She stated directly, without any greeting, that they are currently at the family business. Your father is emptying out his office. The security team just contacted me. Is there a way to prevent him? Even better than that. I've already alerted the authorities and the FBI's unit that deals with financial offenses. They are en route as we speak. However, Tara, she hesitated for a moment, you need to go there in person. You are now the majority shareholder with controlling rights. The required documents were submitted early this morning. I rose from my seat, and the chair made a harsh sound as it dragged against the floor. They aren't aware of that fact as of yet, are they? Remember that knowledge is what gives us the upper hand. Arrive there prior to their ability to eliminate any evidence. Uncle Michael's documents demonstrate the act of stealing, however there may be further details we remain unaware of. While hurrying to my car, another message arrived, this time originating from my mother. You are such an unappreciative child, considering every sacrifice we have made for your benefit. You're gonna be sorry, though strangely their warnings didn't make me feel scared this time. I knew the truth, and more importantly, I had absolutely nothing to protect anymore. I got to the headquarters of the family business right as my parents were exiting the building, holding containers filled with stuff from my dad's workspace. Emma was with them, appearing anxious as she looked all around. They stopped moving when they noticed me getting out of my vehicle. What's your purpose for being here? My father questioned, attempting to keep the commanding tone of the company's boss. But I was able to discern the worry reflected in his gaze. That's the same question I was about to pose, I answered in a composed manner. Particularly since you're removing items from my asterisk organization without any approval. Your organization? Emma said in a mocking tone. What exactly are you referring to? I lifted up my phone, revealing the paperwork that proved ownership. My grandmother signed over the controlling interest in the company to me earlier today, and as the main shareholder now, I'm particularly interested in those containers you're carrying. Could they possibly contain proof of what you did with the money put in trust for me? The color completely drained from my mother's face. Then, police vehicles entered the parking area, emergency lights activated. Law enforcement officials came out of vehicles that weren't clearly marked, and then I noticed my Uncle Michael's vehicle pull up with Grandma sitting beside him. You don't comprehend, my mother begged, her voice filled with tremors. All our actions were for the benefit of this family. No, I countered. Everything that you all did was intended for Emma, and your present plan involves running away with what you haven't stolen from my inheritance. I shifted my gaze toward my sister. So, Emma, how was the cruise? Do you think it was a worthwhile experience? As Emma suddenly started crying, the FBI agents drew nearer. My father attempted to get her away from them, but it was unsuccessful. Ultimately, the reality of their actions had come to light for everyone involved. 3 months after that, I was sitting in my grandmother's garden in Indianapolis. We were drinking our morning coffee and watching the leaves fall. The inquiry conducted by the FBI had uncovered even more than we originally thought. It turned out my parents had been stealing funds not only from the money set aside for me, but also from the corporation itself. Right now, they're up against accusations at the federal level, plus a bunch of lawsuits from people who own stock in the business. Emma had worked out an arrangement with the lawyers on the other side. She promised to give evidence if they promised not to prosecute her. She relocated to Minnesota, finally having to take care of herself since our parents weren't giving her money anymore. She sent me a really long message where she said she was sorry, but some hurts are just too profound to be fixed by saying I'm sorry. You know, Grandma commented as she took a drink of her coffee, your grandfather would be so pleased with how you dealt with all of this. He was always saying that wealth shows what people are really like inside. I agreed, thinking about the new things I'd put into place at the company. Since I've been in charge, we started a program to help the kids of the people who work here pay for school, and we also made our financial processes a lot easier to understand. The company was doing really well, based on honesty rather than lies. I didn't want any of this to happen, I confessed. All I ever wanted was to be treated with respect. My grandma leaned over and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. It seems like the biggest difficulties we face can actually be life's most valuable gifts in disguise. Somehow, I'd managed to take the hurt they inflicted and create something good from it. She really nailed it. I discovered an inner strength, a sense of direction, and above all, a belief in my own value. That trip they went on, leaving me behind, in retrospect, it wasn't the amazing experience they'd hoped for. As it turns out, it was the beginning of things falling apart for them, and the dawn of a whole new chapter for me.